Hi gang, this week's The Joy of Football is on the back of the Euros, and we start off with Voice of Passion, as I get angry about England's performances. Letter from the Gantry is kind of letter from the stand as well. Martin going to the final and enjoying it from the stands. Three of the best we need to talk about, yes, the failures and the successes, the team of the Euros, and we finish up with stoppage time where we start looking forward to pre-season. Sit where you are. Let's go. The Joy of Football podcast. With me, Neil Barnett.
And with me, Martin Tyler.
Looks like Xavi! Ready! Aguero!
The Joy of Football.
Hello, and welcome to a unique episode of The Joy of Football, because it may have some slow motion talking. Martin Tyler went to the Euros final in Berlin yesterday, flew back this morning. He hasn't had a lot of sleep. How are you?
I haven't had a lot of sleep. How do you expect I am? You're absolutely right to warn the viewers. I think visually, those who are actually watching on WhatsApp, not WhatsApp, YouTube, they were watching on you. There you go. There's my first non-deliberate error. I think they probably should turn the picture off, because I've always sort of looked my age. Now I look worse than my age.
Oh, well, your bright shirt deflects.
That'll help. Yeah, I've tried every trick in the book, but I don't think I'm on a winning wicket here. So anyway, let's
Wrong
go.
Sport. Okay,
Yeah.
let's waste no time and go straight into, are you surprised? Voice of Passion.
Voice of Passion.
That's you, Neil.
Right. England. I'm going to go through a series of things that I feel passionate about, and I want reason from you. Jordan Pickford, goalkeeper. His distribution throughout the tournament, but especially in the final, was from the Stone Age. It was just unacceptable. John Stones, and to a lesser extent Mark Gay, he wanted the ball off him time and time again, and he launched it like not playing for Sean Dyche, like playing for Harry Bassett, for God's sake. It was just ridiculous. One of the few times that he rolled the ball out and tried to play from the back was Cole Palmer's goal, England's goal. And for the rest of the time, the ball just came back and back and back. Surely we've gone past this.
Do you think it was his decision?
Yes.
Surely, if it was his decision and the coaching staff didn't want it, that would have been stopped.
But why didn't he give it to Stones when Stones kept coming for it?
Well, there is the fear in a final, of course, of making the kind of mistake that we're sort of getting used to week in, week out in any top-level football now, because that's the way goalkeepers are asked to play. But you wouldn't want to be caught up giving a goal away like that in a match of such significance.
Unai Simon didn't do it.
He did play some long passes, but he didn't.
Yeah, but you need to when you get pressed.
Well, that's probably what Jordan would say. I think he's England's best goalkeeper. That would be one thing I'd throw back at you. Who would you play instead?
I don't deny that he's England's best goalkeeper. That is an issue for England. It is a problem. We haven't got a good enough goalkeeper. He is someone who's battled relegation for the last few seasons. Everton supporters, I know, will say that he's one of their best players, and I accept that. But if you're telling me he's a top 4 goalkeeper, which I know you're not, but if you were telling me that, I would swear.
I'm telling you, he's a top 2 goalkeeper in a tournament of 24 teams, because that's a fact. Look, you balance Jordan. He's got a wonderful personality. I was there very early at the game and watched the warm-up. I love watching the warm-ups, and the goalkeepers come out first, and he was straight into the relating to the crowd. But I'm thinking, is that a distraction? Are we getting too far ahead of ourselves here? But he was then right down to business. And Martin Margetson has been an excellent goalkeeping coach for England, though he's Welsh. I thought that everything they did in the warm-up suggested, even like the red tops with the white shorts, it was a tribute, I don't know deliberately, but that the training tops, to the colours worn in 1966. So, listen, I understand what you're saying. I think a lot of people over the 24 hours or so that are reflecting of why did that happen. It would be nice to be able to ask that question, and it hasn't always happened. But he has got a really terrific drive, probably better than most goalkeepers.
But he drove it to Spanish players every time, not to English players. It was part of the problem. Look,
it's very hard. That's why people don't want it, because it's very hard to pick people out. Some goalkeepers are very good at doing that. You can pick out a wide man if the marking is such that the wide man's
Edison.
Yeah, they can do that. But anyway, I would defend his record for his country, and the fact I would also defend that there isn't anything in his game to suggest that was panic. I'd like to know the answer. You've posed a very good question. I can't come up with the answer.
I don't think it was panic. I think it was a closed mind. That's all. By the way, all these complaints and all this passion accepts the fact that if Mark Gahey's header had gone in and not been cleared off the line, we'd have been having a different kind of discussion. But it didn't. So we're having this discussion. Right, my second voice of passion, left back. Mark Cucurella's assist for the winner is something that England could not have supplied until Luke Shaw came in the last game, and clearly wasn't match fit in the way that Cucurella was match fit. I think you'll agree that I said to you right from the beginning, before Ian Wright and other people went on about it, he's got to play Bukayo Saka at left back. He's got to have a left-footed player at left back. And that was when it was a back four. When it went to a back three, it became even more critical that the one wide player, the wing back, had to be of the foot of the flank that he was playing on. And this thing of having a Trippier on the left and Saka on the right. We scored one goal from a cross in the whole tournament, and it was the first goal when Saka cut back on his left foot and crossed for Bellingham running in to head home. For the rest of the time, we kept playing the ball wide and getting nothing. And Cucurella showed that you have to have a left-sided player on the left foot.
Well, Luke Shaw wasn't fit, and Saka didn't want to play there, as I understand it. That he hadn't played there for a long time, and that's a big risk for a manager who put a lot of faith in Saka going into the tournament, playing where he played throughout the tournament, well, obviously with a tweak or two along the way. And he did have a stint in one of the games, didn't he, where he went on to the left. But
at wingback, it wasn't so bad at four at the back, where you had Walker in a much better situation to overlap, although Walker's crossing was lamentable, but that was an individual thing. But on the left, he had Foden at the beginning, who cut inside every time he got the ball, so he never gave him that option. And then when he went to wing-back, he had no one on the left until Luke Shaw.
And Jude Bellingham's found himself a little bit on the left as well to try and fill holes out there. I think you get something, you take away something. That's the balancing act. And Gareth Southgate decided that he wasn't prepared to do that. I think they hoped that Luke Shaw would be fit a bit earlier. And funny enough, having scored in the last final, then he comes back into the team to play in this one. And I thought for the first half he was excellent. It was
I thought he had a good game,
in front of me,
especially given his circumstances.
Yeah, and he looked like an England left back to continue in that vein, whoever the manager is for the next game. But you've got a point. Cucurella did, but it wasn't a cross that Morata headed in, was it?
No.
He was on the pitch there.
More to the point, it was a first-time ball into someone running into the 6-yard line.
And someone who should have been marked better and therefore wouldn't have scored and might have been offside. But you can trace back every goal. And we're going to come on to Cucurella in several forms later on, but he's been truly outstanding. And to assist on the winner and then make sure that he personally ran down the 4 minutes of added time at the end, playing with some of the.
I get embarrassed when he does that for Chelsea. So doing it for Spain, I just got angry. But I have fallen in love with him this tournament.
But if it had been
Mark Cucurella, I love you.
If it had been your man Bukayo Saka playing on the left doing exactly the same thing, I can't imagine Bukayo would do it, knowing his personality. But you'd be going, well, that's fine because it's for us. When it's against us, then he's a villain, isn't he? He's a villain.
Okay, now I'm going into the central midfield, number 10, number 9 area. I accepted the experiment with Trent Alexander-Arnold in the midfield role. I think it could have been carried out earlier, but I thought it was a good experiment. I also accepted that it didn't work. Conor Gallagher came in for a game and that didn't work, and that was quickly dismissed. Kobbie Mainoo came in and everybody went crazy because he's an 18, 19-year-old who's just had his first half a season in the first team at Manchester United, and because he's not bad. But that's what he is. He's not bad. He's not yet anywhere near a top player. He's not yet anywhere near an international player. He's just not bad. I saw him several times in games in the flesh this last season, and he was totally anonymous. He wasn't ready for this kind of...
I saw him win the FA Cup.
Yeah, he did win the FA Cup against a very tired Manchester City.
But he scored what turned out to be the winning goal. It wasn't obviously at that moment, but it did turn out to be a decisive goal. And I thought he came through his England baptism very promisingly as well. But the point you're making is that he was like third or fourth choice.
Yeah, and what would have been much, much better for me would have been to have pulled Jude Bellingham back there. And Bellingham drives a team on. He doesn't have to be the number 10, make the difference player and almost never get the ball. He must have had the second least possession after Harry Kane in the England team, and certainly less than Jordan Pickford. Bang, bang, Jordan Pickford. And if he'd have been driving forward from next to Declan Rice, and then you could either have got a number 10 like Cole Palmer or brought Anthony Gordon in and put Foden at number 10, or you could have pulled Harry Kane back and brought in Ollie Watkins to run in behind. I just think we never sorted out that area of the pitch.
He wouldn't have scored the 2 goals that he scored. Maybe from the long throw, possibly, but he wouldn't have been there for Saka's cross. And he had the best shot that England didn't score with in the final. So he's getting into positions and obviously scored so many goals for Real Madrid. I think that was the feeling that he could contribute more in that. And I thought,
at Real Madrid he had Cruz and
but he got pulled away from it as the season changed. After his wonderful first half of the season, didn't score so many goals. So playing him in where Gareth wanted to play him, I thought he was a goal threat. He's one of those who, when you look back, how can you even think that he could do better? He's had the most thrilling season of his life, and he's obviously going to be a fantastic footballer, not just as a player on the field, but he's got a wonderful football brain. He's got that little spark of aggression about him that we all like in players as long as they keep it under control. And when we look at maybe individuals not quite measuring up, so much was expected of Jude Bellingham. I actually contributed to the advert that went out, the Hey Jude advert, before the tournament started, and the Golden Boy, and I think he's coped with that pretty well. But if he's not the superstar of the tournament like the ones wearing the red shirts of Spain, it will come. It will definitely come. And you could see in a lot of England faces the pain of defeat. And I thought he looked like something. It ain't going to happen to me again. I've won the Champions League. I'm going to come back and do something with England. I'm going to get a trophy in my time with England. So, but it's the debate again whether it would have helped Declan to have done that. I don't know. But you're playing manager, and the manager who had to do it, and the man who signed the team sheet had made his decision. And what I did like about what Gareth did was that I think because Luke Shaw came to the last game, Trippier didn't play the full set, did he? But 8 of them started every game. And I think that's an achievement, because when you play in a team, what you don't want is to be chopped and changed. And there's so much of that because of the nature of the fixtures. But there was enough space between the fixtures for that fatigue to come in. Although Gareth did say afterwards, didn't he, that you don't understand some of the difficulties we've had through the fatigue through the season. And we talk about this every week, Neil, don't we? And what's going to happen with the calendar, how we're going to protect these super talents so that they can really show off their very best when these big tournaments come around.
I want to give Gareth Southgate credit, because I don't just want to sit here and say I didn't like the setup. I didn't like the setup, but his use of substitutes was as good as anybody in the tournament.
It got even better, didn't it? I think the earliness of it, and the way that obviously Cole Palmer has settled in as an England player. I mean, there have been some games where he's not been involved. I think there was it the March Internationals where he was carrying an injury and he didn't feature at all. Warmed up a couple of times but didn't come on. But where's he going to go? I mean, and, everything. What a season. It started at Wembley.
By the way, 30 goals he scored this season.
Counting the 2 for Manchester
25 for Chelsea, 2 for England, 1 for England under 21s, and 2 for Man City.
The Super Cup and the Community Shield.
So 30 goals in the season from a midfielder.
And that's astonishing.
That's attacking midfielder.
But he'll be looking in the mirror thinking, I should have got 35. That's the sort of guy that he is. And that's where you hope the pain. I genuinely thought England would win, even though Spain have been the best team. I just thought it was, if you like, written in the stars.
But no one was going to win 7 games out of 7.
All those things. Spain with all these amazing stats, 26 cup finals against non-Spanish teams in club and Champions League, Europa League and club and international matches as well. I mean, it's got to end sometime, but it didn't end last night, sadly.
I think the other thing that I just want to say out of that as well, which is a positive passion, is at the end of the game, you were talking about how bad some of the England players looked as though they were feeling. At the end of the game, after the celebrations, the Spanish players, and before the trophy presentation, a lot of them went to the England players, and particularly to players of their own club.
David Raya was the first one, actually. I noticed him. And clearly he had a lot of connections. Ivan Toney, his Brentford days, and the Arsenal connection with Aaron Ramsdale. They were. But I think he went to Jordan Pickford as well, Goalkeepers Union. And Luke Shaw got a very good mention for doing that when Switzerland lost the penalty shootout. And these are good people, I mean, at times they're great players, and at times they're not as good a players as they hope they would be, and the fans hope they would be. But the general level of personality is far more embracing of other people, the inclusivity of other people's feelings, rather than wild celebrations that perhaps we saw after Argentina won the World Cup.
And after they beat Netherlands in the World Cup, which I thought was
Lionel
Messi, you're not as sweet as you look. Right, okay, that is Voice of Passion. Next up, we've almost got Letter from the Gantry.
Letter from the Gantry.
But it actually is this week Letter from the Stand in Berlin. Martin Tyler.
Well, in a way, it's Letter from the Gantry from the intro, but here we go. And this was written on no sleep, so forgive me if it's not what you want, but I'm trying my best. I hadn't been to the Olympic Stadium in Berlin since the 2006 World Cup final between Italy and France. Happy memories of that, because commentating on my own for the Australian channel SBS, I ended up with 2 different commentary positions on a World Cup final. Non-European nations like Australia don't carry too much sway when there are 2 European teams playing in a European city, in Italy, France, in Berlin. Another complication was that as a one-man band, I was expected to pop up in vision before the game at halftime, then again at the end. That needed extra camera equipment, which, because it would obstruct any broadcaster from behind from getting a clear view of the match, it meant me being planted in the back row, which of course was furthest from the pitch. Therefore, my main job of calling the game was more difficult. To me, it seemed like the tail wagging the dog. Worse still, back in 2006, when I found my spot at the back of the main stand, the distance from the pitch was compounded by an obscured view of the right-hand goal. I couldn't see the right-hand goal. I ventured back to the control office just to point out this rather troubling difficulty, but expecting not much more than sympathy. I would have to follow the play at that end of the ground on the monitor. It's been done before. I would like to say then that fate smiled on me, but in fact it was the South African chief of commentary positions who made me smile, really smile. At the last minute, a position had become available through a no-show. Fancy that, a no-show at World Cup final. And it was in the very front row, a prime site. All I had to do was run up and down and back up to the other position, having spoken to the camera at position 1 to sprint down. I was 20 years younger then. Sprint down to gorge myself, as I put it, on the match itself from position 2. It was such kindness. Well, on Sunday, I sat opposite that media stand, thanks to a German friend of mine who managed to get me a ticket for Spain versus England, the final of Euro 2024. More kindness associated with Berlin. As a fan, I had a bit to learn. Getting a QR code on my phone, not easy for someone of my age. Not taking a bag, very different to media duties when you have lots of bags and lots of notes. A man bag might have been okay, but although I could have carried it, there's no way I could have carried it off. For the record, despite lots of information to the contrary, the public transport was very good for the supporters. Free passes in the city for 36 hours starting at midnight on match day. Partly because of this, supporters' behaviour, from what I saw, was excellent. Mostly the two competing countries, but plenty of locals as well. The Germans I spoke to all said they wanted England to win, but they didn't seem to be prepared to shout about it. But they didn't hold back at targeting the Spain left-back Marc Cucurella, whose arm or hand they believe stopped Germany from being in the final. Cucurella was totally unperturbed. You might say he didn't turn a hair. The match, well, the better team won. The tournament, the best team won. And they picked up most of the individual awards. Man of the final, Nico Williams. Young player of the tournament, Lamine Yamal. Player of the tournament, Rodri. Even a share in that tie for the Golden Boot with Dani Olmo. Ardent England watchers would not have been too concerned when Williams put Spain in front, while in fact we were still digesting the news that Rodri, the great man, had not come out for the second half. It was the fourth game in a row that England had gone 1-0 down and they'd won the other 3, with the help, I must say, of one penalty shootout, because although that always counts as a win for me, many a statman, and some of you might be listening or watching, record it as a draw. Not in my book. Cole Palmer, sweetly hit equaliser, was all part of the script. Another substitute would come and decide the game. That's the way England do it. He did, but he wasn't English. Mikel Oyarzabal, the latest breaker of English hearts at a major tournament. England's remarkable capacity for magical moments rather than sweeping displays almost produced extra time. Had it done so, Gareth Southgate's leap of celebration would have cleared the city's famous Brandenburg Gate. Many England fans stayed to applaud Spain's remarkable achievement. 7 straight wins, including beating the holders Italy, the host Germany, the nation that had been in the last 2 World Cup finals, France, and now consecutive Euro finalists in England. As someone who remains so clear about how 1966 lifted the spirits of the nation, I definitely wanted all of you who are closing on 60 years and younger, who have never had that thrill, to experience the utter joy that winning an international trophy can bring. It was fabulous back then. I am also very grateful to Gareth Southgate and his players and his staff for coming so close without ever being quite pressing all the right buttons at the right time. Proud of them, really. But on a podcast called The Joy of Football, the last word has to be simply Spain.
Right. It's 3 of the best.
And he makes them pay.
Right. Your young player.
Well, I think we might be all Cucurella'd out, but I'm going to go for him. He's still 25. He's 26 on July the 22nd. So he might move beyond the young player category. But when you're in the ground, I mean, I've obviously seen him play for Brighton, seen him play for Chelsea, and always a commentator's dream, because you can't mistake him for anybody else. But he was like a sort of wire-haired terrier at Bukayo Saka, who is bigger and stronger, but he just wouldn't give up, and it was actually, when you can be that close to it and see it, as opposed to watching it on television, I couldn't take my eyes off every time. It was one of the great battles of the final, and then Bukayo had his moments as well. He was involved, obviously, in the goal. But the will to win and his celebration at the end. He was first into the crowd, wasn't he? I think, and perhaps to those who've had to fight his way up, he wasn't going to be a top Premier League player. He's now at a club where he's got a chance of being that. That might upset Brighton fans. Brighton, of course, have done very well recently, and I don't want to disrespect that at all. But he got the move. I think they got good money for him at the time. Now I think it might have been a bit of a steal because he played so well. No, I know I'm maybe exaggerating. Commentators do that sometimes. Forgive us. But I think, again, I'd like to mention that if you like, then you might think he's punched above his weight.
I think he is the ultimate Spanish player. Pass, move, technically good, plays the ball early, doesn't actually do anything outrageously brilliant, very rarely gives the ball away. He has been, for the most part, at best, okay. In this tournament, he was quite clearly the best left back and outstanding. And I'd just say a couple of things about that. One is that in the days before the final, after the semi-final, The Athletic did an absolutely superb interview with him in which he talked about his struggles at Chelsea and his struggles of joining a club that's expected to win as opposed to a club that celebrates every point that it gets. I hadn't realised, actually, that in Spain he played for what I call the mini-mighty Eibar, the Basque team that has a capacity in its stadium of 7,500 and spent about 5 years in La Liga, and who I supported from afar for its wonderful use of the pyramid system. And they played pretty direct football, actually, very opposite to Spain. And that's where he got going and went to Brighton from. But the reason that softened me to him, and for which I fell in love with him, wasn't him, it was his wife. Because he underwent groin surgery. I think, was it groin surgery or knee surgery? Knee surgery, I think. Somewhere last last December. And he posted on social media a photo of himself with a little television. And he was clearly had been watching the game, Chelsea's next game, when he'd undergone surgery. And he put a little note on there, surgery gone well, like they do, all the rest of that stuff. And then he obviously fell asleep. And his wife took another photo of him with the television there and posted it on social media and said something about, obviously it wasn't that good a game or something, but just sense of humour. Absolute nothing but a sense of humour.
I just finish off with one thing. I know some of the coaches of the previous management at Chelsea, and I'm absolutely assured that during this period of injury, that Mark had a good look at himself in the mirror and said, I have got to do everything possible. Almost it might be taken away from me. I've got to be A1 fit. And goodness me, he couldn't have had a better example in the final of that. So it was a sort of switch caused by adversity, but some players go under when that happens. He's come back stronger.
He was defensively weak as well for me. And then in the last 6 weeks of all 6 games of the season, when Chelsea won all the games on the run-in, he was the one who went into midfield and did the John Stones, Trent Alexander-Arnold thing. He was the one who started doing that, and he did it brilliantly. And he just blossomed. He blossomed in the last 5-6 weeks of the season.
And he's blossomed in Euro 2024.
Yeah, great credit to him. My young player is Kobe Mainu. I've gone through him a little bit already.
And it's Mainu.
Mainu.
Yes.
Mainu.
Yeah. Main, how do you spell Main? M-A-I-N. How do you spell Mainu? M-A-I-N. O-O. If he scores the winner, of course, to win a championship, he might have a few O's added if I'm still around.
Oh, God, you should have been a school teacher. You missed your vacation.
Definitely not. Do you know I was? I was 1 weekend away from starting as a supply teacher back in 1971. I was on the Dole in Brixton, where the claim to fame was John Major, who became Prime Minister, was also at that time receiving national assistance. And on the Friday before I was due to start, I got a chance to become a journalist at Marshall Cavendish publishers on a football partwork magazine, but a partwork was a technical term where he collected it in weekly parts. So that's how close it could have happened then, really.
Yeah. John Major, Chelsea supporter.
Oh gosh, everything leads to Chelsea.
He came to Stamford Bridge and we lost the game. And I wrote a piece in the Matchday programme the following week saying, we've lost the last 3 games you've watched. Just go down the car park at the end of the ground and listen to my club called Commentary, and only come in with 10 minutes to go for 3 goals up. And I got a ticking off from Downing Street.
Yes.
You can't do that. I got Chelsea got sent a letter, and I got.
And Keir Starmer supports Arsenal. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, he can't be perfect, can he? Mainu, good player, great prospect.
What did you call him?
Mainu. Thank you. Good player. Good player. That was my hand, by the way, if you're listening. Great prospect, but not yet ready for the promotion that he's received. Let him become this season a player who develops, and he's got a chance of being a very, very, very good player, and maybe more. But that's all at the moment.
I was trying to think of players who've come in younger, and probably would be said about them of one to be at least have long and probably distinguished careers, like Wayne Rooney, James Milner, who's been a top-level footballer for well over half his life, and Trevor Francis, of course, a Superboy at Birmingham. And sometimes, if you don't get that chance, there'll be a lot of people we know in football who will say, do you remember so-and-so in the youth team? He was a terrific player, and it never quite fell for him, an injury at the wrong time, playing out of position or something like that, or maybe not even the heart for it, you know. But I think Cobby's got all those things. I don't think he's playing in a good position. He's very comfortable there. And he's got to this point which we should praise him for. And you're saying, well, we'll wait and see what happens. And that's the same for every footballer.
Yeah, no,
we'll wait and see what happens.
I'm not putting him down. I'm just saying he can't be central to England's.
It was. Did you see him last night? This is things you see when you're in the ground. When the England players were sort of standing around, waiting for Spain to get all the individual awards, Kobe was leaning against the post, just away from everybody, and with his own thoughts and his own view on it. And he seems to have that independence. I think he will be a leader, and not a follower. Yeah.
I think he's going to be a very good player, but in time, old player.
Well, it's almost. I shouldn't have to apologise for saying Lionel Messi, should I? Really, 45 team tournaments wins or cups, and although he got injured and would have been absolutely hauled off, but knowing the team would be better off without him. So another Copa America, another.
Argentina have won their last 3 tournaments.
Well, exactly, like Spain did, didn't they, when they won the 2 Euros with the World Cup in between. That's equal that record, I think. And, you know, he's been at the forefront of it all. I know he's had days when it's not been good. He missed a penalty, didn't he? Was that in the shootout? I think
against Ecuador.
Yeah, it was a shootout, yeah. And he has missed quite a lot of penalties. He wouldn't want that stat. He's got plenty of miles better stats to defend himself with. I just think, you know, Cristiano Ronaldo wants to keep playing because when you've got that amount of talent, you don't want it ever to stop. I mean, you do unfortunately lose the physicality, you know, but they'll be doing keepy-uppies in their 80s, God willing they'll live that long, you know. The ability is there, and it's so frustrating when it ebbs away, you know, when you suddenly can't run anymore. I'm not saying that's the case with Leo at the moment, but it's got to come to an end soon, at least in prime time.
By the way, the penalty, he chipped it with the goalkeeper dropping down, and it hit the crossbar and went over.
So it's an imaginative attempt. But I've been critical a little bit on our podcast about Cristiano's, maybe the fact that he, for his own good, might have been given a bit of rest time in the games or left out of that third group game, which they lost. But I can't blame them. I mean, that talent, it must be just so amazing to play the greatest game in the world and realise you are the greatest players in the world. I mean, I can't imagine what that must be like. And so if longevity is part of the package, let's support them through these difficult times and not be super, super critical. But they'll be the most critical. They will be of themselves because they know what's not quite there anymore. But he's won. Argentina have won, and he's my old player of this podcast.
Well, before the semi-final of Copa America, he was doing the press conference, the player press conference, and Angel Di Maria had announced that the final, or this was his last tournament, so hopefully the final was the last game. And Lionel Messi did a big thing about, we've got to get to the final for Angel. He's got to play.
He also, I believe, emphasised the point that he is available for the next final, the World Cup one. And Scaloni, the coach, has said he can come whenever he wants, basically.
But Angel Di Maria played, I think, into extra time. It was 0-0 at the end of full time. Argentina, Colombia. And it was won, in fact, in the second half of extra time by Lautaro Martinez goal. Strange tournament for Argentina. Martinez got nearly all Argentina's goals and then wasn't selected for the final. It was Julian Alvarez,
I was taken to task.
Manchester City
you teased me a lot about my use of puns, but I couldn't resist when he joined Manchester United for an Angel Delight. And I got criticised by the television correspondent of a newspaper that the very next day, or after the day after the match, had put it on the front of their, not on the sports page, a banner headline above the strapline of the newspaper, Angel Delight, Manchester United. So he's given a lot of delight to a lot of people.
Well, this is what I wanted to bring up, really, because my players this week are all Manchester United connected, mainly. And Angel Di Maria, I remember him winning the league in Portugal at Benfica when he was on the left wing and playing in a 4-4-2. He then went to Real Madrid and he played on the left wing for a certain amount of time, but he finished up in the midfield three in a 4-3-3 at Real Madrid. And in 2014, when Argentina lost the World Cup final in Brazil to Germany, he missed the final. He was injured. And they missed him so much. He was such an important player. And in the Champions League final that season, when they came back from the dead and equalised in the last minute against Atletico Madrid, and then won in extra time quite strongly. I think it was 4-1 in the end.
4-1 it was.
Yeah. He was the man of the match. He was the best player. But they sold him that summer to Manchester United. And he was woeful at Manchester United. He was unhappy. He was woeful.
He was a victim of a nasty burglary as well. Well, not all burglaries are nasty, but that was a particularly nasty.
Then he went on to Paris Saint-Germain and did well. He continued to do well for Argentina. He's continued to do well at club level. He's an old footballer now. My question is, why did it work for him everywhere he went except Manchester United? Strange.
Yeah, well, I think he's made up for it elsewhere, and he's not the only player with a big name who's come to Manchester United in the last
I
decade
do
or
wonder.
so.
I do wonder about a number of things. I do think the tempo of the Premier League is so different from everywhere else. I don't think people really understand how different it is with the high tempo runs.
We all wish, and it will never happen, that Messi had played in the Premier League, don't we? It would have been astonishing, and it would have been something I think the league deserved. But maybe he had a thought or two about that as well.
And the other thing is climate. I do think, there's the old cliche and the joke that it rains every time in Manchester all the time. It does when I go there. It just does. So the climate, I don't know. It's very strange. A world-class great player, and it just didn't work out at Man U.
And it would have been, I think, more widely acknowledged if there hadn't been Messi. I think he would have been maybe a few percentage points down on him, but he's that good. He is that good.
Yeah. And finally, on three of the best, your player.
Yes, Aymeric Laporte is my choice this week, who had some good times at Manchester City, but then I think was deemed as one of those that could be moved on and went to Saudi Arabian football. I mean, it's strange that he's playing for Spain at all, because he's French, and he won, I think, over 50 youth caps for France at various age groups, and didn't really have many connections with Spain, but was able to get nationality and get in the team. And I think he's been in the team a couple of years now, but he's played with the sort of authority. As you can see why Manchester City signed him in the first place. And in lauding all the attacking players, we should look at their defensive record as well. It caught my eye really. He played on with a bang in the face when they were wondering whether they were going to actually have players suspended and injured at the same time. And he came through that, and he's come through pretty much every aerial challenge. And when the 4 minutes went up, and the one or two balls were knocked forward, and you're going, oh no, Port's going to head that away, and he sure did. So Saudi can be seen as almost a rest home, and players get well paid, but we know that they've come back out of it again, and it's not done them too much harm. N'Golo Kanté, if he played, I know what you're going to say, if he played in the right position for France, would have shown, like Aymeric has done, that that there is life in that football, and you can come and play in not just play in a Euro tournament, you can win it and have an outstanding run in your position. So I think he's probably it's a little bit of a comeback story, because when he left City, I think people were saying, well, yeah, he scored the winner. I did the commentary for Sky Sports. He scored the winner in a League Cup final, didn't he, against Tottenham? That was the week where Mourinho was sacked before the final was played, I think. Mm-hmm. And he scored the only goal of the game. As he's chipped in with a few goals, he hasn't been that impressive in that respect in this tournament, but his defending's been excellent.
Yeah, with you. My player is also a centre-back, and also left-sided centre-back, Lisandro Martinez of Manchester United, who at the age of 24 was unable to get into the Argentina side at the World Cup because the 10 years older than him, Nicolas Otamendi, not good enough for Manchester City, was selected ahead of him. But in this Copa America, Martinez has been the centre-back. He has played extremely well. He's got his first international goal, which was in the 1-1 draw with Ecuador. That goal by Ecuador was the only goal that Argentina conceded in the whole of this summer's Copa America. People forget at the beginning of last season, really in the first half of the season, the problem for Erik ten Hag was that they couldn't score a goal. It wasn't that they were conceding goals. They didn't concede goals. And then the second half of the season, they started scoring goals, but they started conceding them. But of course, they had no Varane, no Martinez, and no Shaw, all three injured. And Martinez has come back. He's fit. And I think that Ten Hag will be saying, we got into the top four my first season with that back line. If we get a centre-back to replace Varane next to Martinez, we'll get into the top four again. And I hope
we've got some subscribers in Argentina, because we've done a fair bit.
Yeah.
Messi, Di Maria, and now Martinez as well. He's short. He's a competitive player, and he's got that short man spring, hasn't he?
Yeah, and also he jumps into people in the right way without fouling them, and make the ones he can't beat in the air. He makes sure they don't.
And he was Erik ten Hag's man, so I think that's when you bring players in, and there's been criticism of some of the others he brought in, but Martinez hasn't really let him down. He's just been injured,
Yeah. Okay, that is three of the best. Quickly on to, we need to talk about Gareth Southgate.
What do you want me to say? We've talked about him a lot. Personally, I think he's been vindicated for a lot of the criticism. You made the point earlier about the substitutions working, a sharper, perhaps in-game result from that kind of thing, the changes. But I think the continuity, he's always been a manager who's liked to settle on on a group, and then if he can settle on a side within the group, which is what he did for most of this tournament, it suits his way of management. I think outside of the actual games, he's been word perfect. I mean, the games are obviously a challenge for every manager. You can't win every game, and the expectation from England is high. But I do think the way he's, we keep talking about reintroducing the England team to the nation. It sounds a bit, I don't know, a bit soppy, really, but it's true, because just the disconnect had happened, and he's been in charge of the reconnect, and whatever holes you want to pick in it, and you've done it, but you've done it with a certain amount of sensitivity, may I say so. Rather surprised me in that respect. But you can't argue against the character and the qualities of Gareth, the man. Yeah, every manager knows that his decisions will be picked through and dissected. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. But what he's done for English football, if he does stop, and personally I hope he doesn't, because I think the FA is very much suited to his character. But he'll want to have another go at club management. So those are my thoughts on a guy I like very much.
I'm not convinced he's of the coaching calibre that is required. I am convinced he's of the managerial calibre that's required. He has changed the face of international football in this country, and that was such a huge step. And he's made the England team likeable. He has made it. He's made those changes. He's even... Has it rubbed off on the England supporters? They were the least obnoxious they've been.
Well, let me just interrupt you then. I've been with the England supporters and travelling to Berlin and spending some time with them after the game and talking about all these things in the aftermath of a defeat. And the vast majority of the fans who are in the England supporters club, they want him to stay. And they know there's going to be media criticism, which has obviously started today and will be, but it's sort of slightly, it's done softer now.
Yeah, I mean, because in the end, that header off the line changed everything.
Yeah,
but if you were to say to me, I mean, I don't like the honour system and all that garbage, but if you was to say to me, Gareth Southgate is going to get knighted for his services to the national team, I'd be totally in support of it, because he has changed the values in a positive way. I wouldn't support it for the coaching, but I would support it definitely for the management. He has changed everything. He has turned people into England supporters who couldn't support that horribleness beforehand. So lots of credit. I think we need to go for someone a little bit more coaching savvy.
And what about club football then?
He'd be a great director of football.
I'm not sure that's probably what you'd like to hear from the Joy of Football podcast. But anyway, listen, we wait to see. Yeah. What my bottom line is that he should be entitled to make the decision for himself.
I'm with that. I'm with that.
And if he wants to stay, because of what I've just said to you about, although it might upset certain people in the media, they'll have to deal with it. And of course...
Yeah, I think he's earned that right.
I do.
Yeah. Okay, Harry Kane.
Well, I'm trying to get to the bottom of it myself, really, because I think that there is something a little bit more than fatigue. Is it a culmination of previous injuries? Always had
those ankle injuries.
And people talk about the season in the Bundesliga, a wonderful season for him, but they forget what an upheaval that's caused in his life. You know, he's a family man. Just even keeping touch. Everything was done round the corner from Tottenham. He couldn't have really organised his life any better for getting family time. He really could almost jump out of bed to get to the training ground. It's an exaggeration, but that's how he wanted to work. And of course, now he has a home in Germany. But that the extended family is not quite the same. And is he wondering, for all the success that he's had, that maybe it's not a long-term thing? I don't know. But he's come into the tournament looking like a man with the weight of the world on his shoulders, and yet he's just set scoring records in another country, and really justified the move, incredibly justified the move. My answer to you, Neil, is I think he needs a reboot, not new boots. It gets them all the time, but a reboot and a bit of a rest, and then stays as he is as England captain and has another go at it. Because we talk about Gareth deserving, Harry Kane. If you look at the facts, I can only think of Bobby Charlton, who would be rated as the most influential England player of all time, because the goals that Harry has scored and the tournaments he's got. Of course, Bobby has the silverware to back him up, and he wasn't. Bobby played as a striker, as a winger, and as an attacking midfield player. Maybe there's another role for Harry that would keep him in the international scene. But he's looked exhausted. That's what I would say.
I want to liken him to two players. First one is Alan Shearer, because for me, Alan Shearer from 1991 when he got into the Southampton team to
it was actually in the 80s, I think he got in the Southampton team with a hat-trick.
All right, 1990.
He scored, we've had this conversation before, he scored 21 goals, I think, in the top division of Southampton.
Before the Premier League.
But he doesn't, on his stat, he doesn't want 281 league goals. I would have thought the numbers... But
because they fall too far short of Jimmy Greaves.
That's the reason.
But Alan Shearer, from the beginning of the 90s to 1997, was just the most unbelievable all-round... centre forward,
unstoppable on many a game,
and he picked up that awful broken leg, was it, knee injury in '97. I was at the game when it happened. It was a Mercantile Credit pre-season game at Goodison Park. I don't remember. It was Newcastle versus Everton, Chelsea. That's why I was there, or somebody else. There were 4 teams involved in it, and. I think it happened. He just collapsed on the ball.
He'd had an injury before that as well. I think it was his second
injury.
But
he was out for most of the season. Came back in time for the World Cup in '98. But he was never the same player again. And he turned from being the best all-round centre forward you could possibly imagine into the best goal scorer. But not a lot else. And that was enough.
I just remember him the other day saying that at 96 Euros, we've obviously been talking about Euros. He hadn't scored for 2 years.
For England, but that was more to do with England.
Yeah.
He was knocking them in for his club. And that's what's happened to Harry Kane. Harry Kane, he was a beast for those first few years at Tottenham. And after all those ankle injuries, he's such a good footballer. He's got such a good football brain that he's continued to score goals and he's continued to play well. But he can't run in behind. He can't do those all-round centre-forward things anymore. That's my first...
you believe that's permanent. I'm hoping it's temporary.
I think it's been like that for a while.
I haven't seen that many of his Bayern performances, but I don't believe, even with Bayern's status in the Bundesliga... and they didn't win anything, as poor Harry knows, only to his cost. But so the games were very competitive, and I can't believe he got that tally with being the sort of player that you're describing what we've seen in the Euros very accurately. And it's just he's gone off after an hour, in a final.
The other player I want to liken him to is Thierry Henry. Tottenham Arsenal. Harry has played and not scored in the 2015 League Cup final, 2019 Champions League final, 2021 League Cup final, 2021 Euros final, 2024 Euros final. 5 finals.
And not been on the winning side.
No, and I think it gets in your head. It must do. Now, obviously, everybody used to say about Didier Drogba, oh God, he only does it in the big games.
He certainly did do it in the big games.
I think he had 10 cup finals, Didier, and scored 10 goals. But you have to do it in the big games. Why do I want to liken him to Thierry Henry? It wasn't until it was pointed out to me that I realised that Thierry Henry never scored in a cup final. He played the 2000 Euros final, the 2000 UEFA Cup final, the 2001, 2 and 3 FA Cup finals, the 2006 Champions League and World Cup final, and the 2009 Champions League final, and he never scored a goal. No one looks back on Thierry Henry and says, he wasn't good enough, he never scored a goal. Nobody should be looking at Harry Kane and saying, he's not good enough, he's never scored a goal in a final. So I'm bigging him up, but I'm saying, maybe it's time.
Well, I hope that those are facts. No one's disputing that, but they could be coincidence. How many of those games were Spurs expected to win?
No. Well, yeah, no, I agree. But he's not turned up really in those finals.
Well, the Champions League final he shouldn't probably have played. So. Yeah. And that, of course, relates to your injury point. I'm just hopeful that, as I say, how he's going to get any time off, I don't know. But if anybody wants to give him the best chance to be the old Harry Kane, he needs some time off.
Luis de la Fuente.
Yeah. Gosh, Luis Enrique, that was the one we'd heard of, and he couldn't make the job stick. A wonderful player in his time and a very good manager in club football. He's still in the top level of the game. But that Spain of Qatar, I'd say that I never commentate wanting the games to be over, really. I love football. But watching that Spain team pass backwards, sideways, square, and very rarely forwards, and I thought it was a victory for progressive football that they lost. And just as it's a victory for progressive football that they've won Euro 2024. And he's come in because he has this background in the development side of international football. Spain, he's won trophies with Spain at under 19 and I think also under 23. What did he got a silver in the Olympics, didn't he? I think, and now he's got a gold at the the Euro 2024.
He's only had 2 club jobs as an out-and-out manager. In the second tier with Orera, and he only got 32 games in the league before he was sacked. And with Alaves, who of course have been quite regular in our Liga team, and he got 11 league games before he was sacked. So his success coming through the ranks of the Spanish FA setup has been remarkable. And he's 63 years old. He's not a child. And he was the best manager by a mile in the competition. He got everyone playing in their position and looking like they were a team.
Well, the continuity with those underage teams, with players coming through, like Abbott, for example, who's just won the trophy for him. So that does happen. It happened to Gareth Southgate, who was England's under-21 coach, and carried that the bond that he forged with those players into the senior team. And I'm sure we can all come up with other examples of that happening. He does look like a federation man, if that's the way you want to put it. He looks sometimes, when it's all sort of going off in the dugouts, and you know my views on there are far too many people there, and he's trying to pick his way through, and he nearly lost Morata, who's held up the trophy yesterday because of a collision with someone who was trying to do the right thing and ended up barging into the Spain's captain. But he's looked a little bewildered in there. That's unfair because he's certainly not bewildered as a coach. He's, it's a completely different style, and it's great to watch.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to see how he does in the World Cup.
Yeah,
because if he does well again, you're going to be talking about him at the same levels as you're talking about some of the great Deschamps, people like that.
And I guess some of the fixtures, I haven't really looked at the venues, Spanish-speaking places in the States. Yeah.
Finally, we need to talk about Copa America venue issues, and the final was not unlike the Euros final in 2021 at Wembley. It was delayed 75 minutes. As many as 7,000 ticketless people were believed to have got access to the stadium early. There were bundles. There were all sorts of issues with real threats to human health and
involving
life.
the players' families, I believe, as
well.
Yeah,
and and the game was delayed, kick-off for 75 minutes. In the end, they had to let people into the ground because they were frightened of a crush. The whole thing was reckless, irresponsible, and a problem, and shouldn't have been allowed to develop. But on top of that, there have been huge complaints about pitches, about training pitches, and
ticket prices as well.
Yeah, and it really is. It really is becoming a problem. And of course, when Uruguay went out, there weren't enough people stewarding, and there were all the problems with the Uruguayan players' families being attacked by Colombian supporters after that game. It's not a good look ahead of the World Cup. And of course, it's not a good look this final on the weekend where Donald Trump got shot. For America generally.
And nothing as serious as that, but just to throw it into the mix, it's not a good look compared to the very peaceful and sporting scenes that I witnessed in Berlin.
It's a difficult issue at the moment, and the States has never had problems with crowd control at games before, and this is the last thing we need for this to happen ahead of the World Cup, but it has happened.
Well, the FIFA World Club Cup comes before that,
yeah,
and that's going to have big games with a lot of interest and club teams from all over the world. So the best you can say looking at that scenario, and if it does go ahead, and I think it will because FIFA are absolutely determined, that will be a real rehearsal for the World Cup, and maybe some of the issues that have surfaced recently, and horrible as they are, maybe that will be an opportunity to iron out those wrinkles.
And I just have to confirm again that the biggest problem for me is that, is that the pitches aren't built for football, soccer, and are too narrow, and that the surface is often grass laid on an artificial surface, and it's not the same as grass grown out of soil. Okay. Very quickly, we're going to do a team of the Euros. Of the Euros.
It's going to be very quick because your guess is almost the team that won the Euros, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think we've disagreed on goalkeeper. I've put my man in goal, Manuel, the French goalkeeper.
Well, I'm going for Mert Günok of Turkey because of one save, one moment that I will remember for the rest of my life. And I think everybody who saw it will, because it was the reach of the save, the importance of it in the context of the match, and the fact that it was virtually the last play of the game. It was just sensational. Christoph Baumgartner of Austria was the unlucky player who must have thought he'd scored. When he made contact with a header down into the ground, that probably just gave Turkey's goalkeeper the chance to keep it out. But my goodness, it was astonishing. I would never get tired of watching that. No. So he's my goalkeeper, but you love Manuel. So I knew I was going to disagree with you on that one. But he, of course, is a fine goalkeeper, and over the consistent period, he'd probably win. But I think one very, 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 very special moment outwits, out trumps, if you like. Oh, that's not a good word, is it? What we're talking about comes up on top of Manuel's consistent excellence.
I've got a back four of Carvajal, Guéhi, Laporte and Cucurella.
Well, Mark Guéhi has been probably England's standout player. I think the level of expectation is a bit lower because he was going to try and solve a problem that Harry Maguire, who, whatever you think that how Harry has arrived at the time where the selection was made, with club form, etc., the fact is that Gareth Southgate would have played him, and he would have been a bastion. He would have done something that perhaps England haven't been very good at, which is scoring from set pieces or getting fouled for penalties up at set
Although
pieces.
It was Guéhi's flick on from Carl Walker's long throw that Bellingham scored the overhead kick.
And he's a diamond. He's an absolute diamond, and he would get my vote.
I've gone with an all-Spanish midfield, Olmo, Rodri and Fabian Ruiz. It's been the best midfield.
Well, we picked Rodri as the player of the tournament a couple of shows ago. I wax lyrical about Danny Olmo. He's my kind of footballer because he's all different things, all in one package. Actually, I learned one thing since we last talked about him. Because he left Barcelona at 16 and went to Dinamo Zagreb, he's not recognised as universally as some of those who stayed at Barcelona. and it started to knock him a little bit because he's had a very good career. And I believe, and I've only just read this in a very reputable article on him, that he hired a PR agency recently to up his profile. But he's going to get a big move, I think. I think he's going to leave Leipzig on the back of what he's done. And the fact is there's a release clause that can be activated. And I think he probably wants, whether he'd go back to Barcelona, that would be fascinating. But they haven't got the money, I don't think. So I don't think that may be possible. But Chelsea have said they're not going to pay the release fee. So...
Well, he looks like Cole Palmer anyway. Physically, facially, he looks like Cole Palmer.
Gosh,
they'd be like
commentator's
twins.
nightmare. Yes,
Well, talking of Barcelona, I mean, I've got Yamal on the right wing, age 17, just, and Williams on the left wing, still Spain,
age 22, just.
And Barcelona are being linked with Williams.
Yes. Well, listen, this is it's a homage to Spain, and I really think they deserve it. Sometimes. I fear going over the top on one player, and we've talked about 3 or 4 of the Spanish players in quite length today and other podcasts, but it's a team game, and when you put together statistics that have never been done before, you're entitled to be recognised as they are the invincibles of Euro 2024.
Yeah, and my centre forward is not there. This is a 10-man team. There was no centre-forward in the Euros that is worthy of this team. Morata was the nearest, and Morata wasn't good enough. And nobody else was anywhere near. And, in fact, the 4 best centre-forwards for me were all substitutes. Ollie Watkins, your man Fulkrug, Wout Weghorst. He did ever so well when he came on for the Netherlands. And finally, say it for me, Oyarzabal, who, when he came on, not just in the final, but I think in the semi he came on and was very influential.
You won't put Cole Palmer there as a false 9 then to get him in?
Oh, God, no. I've lived through that this season. He's a dreadful... There's no such thing as a false 9.
No, there isn't.
There's a good 9 and a bad 9.
I remember when Spain won it in 2012, Cesc Fabregas was described as a false 9. But he played with his back to goal because he's a very good footballer. He knew what was required, and almost like Morata, you know. You haven't mentioned Morata.
I did. I said he's not good enough.
He's good enough. Yeah,
he's the least bad of a bad bunch. But I'd probably play his wife before him because she dominates him so much off the pitch. She'd probably be more dominant than him on the pitch. Oh, right.
And we can't get Mbappe in because of his broken nose. That's because he would have been a candidate. I'm sure he would have been a candidate.
But he got moved to the left wing after that because it wasn't working.
Yes, yeah. But it's an issue, and I think it's something that I hope football, everything goes round. Nothing's fresh. It comes back again. And we'll probably find Erling Haaland will set a new trend of big strikers who qualify for European finals.
Weird. Okay, that's it, apart from stoppage time.
Stoppage time.
And was there enough stoppage time in the Euro 2024 final?
No, I mean, they put up 4 minutes.
He played 4 minutes.
Cucurella laid down for most of it and got treatment, and he didn't add anything on for that. No.
Then Cucurella got straight up when he had to, which didn't go down well. They're right in front of the England fans. But he did, and if it had been, as we said earlier, if it had been an England player doing the same thing and the right result had been reversed, we'd all been applauding it, really. So stoppage time now.
It's pre-season. Pre-season has started. It's pre-season, and it's a new season. Everybody's rested who's now involved in it, and obviously the Euros and the Copa America guys are going to go off and have their rest and then join up with it. And soon everybody's going to be trotting off across the globe in order to exhaust themselves.
I think it's balmy. I understand because the money that...
Ka-ching!
Yeah, but it is the one thing that can actually be cut back. Chelsea playing Wrexham. Play at Wrexham. Chelsea be home the same night. Wrexham won't have to travel at all. And they'll all help there. They can do more training and fitness there. They're away from home a lot. Why come straight back and go off for 10 days or something like that? Yes.
Chelsea are playing Wrexham in California, which is an 8-hour time difference.
Yes.
But on a club flight where the aircraft won't be as big or as powerful as a commercial flight, it's a 12 to 13 hour journey.
But it's time zones, Neil. Yeah. I mean, I haven't spoken to anybody since Spurs and Newcastle went to Australia right at the end of the Premier League season. It doesn't seem to have caught up with anybody, does it? I don't know, Kieran Trippier, maybe. He went, I think, didn't he? Arsene Wenger was the last one of the top managers to say, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do it. And he was forced into do it, and he had a lot of power as the Arsenal manager. But the players are being sacrificed on this. What's wrong with having a routine that benefits the fans in this country, you know? I mean,
because you're not getting the global recognition, the global meetup with fans who will then become supporters, who will invest
and will spend money and want to come to the games, and the legacy fans will find themselves being priced out of the market. This is a long debate, and we're talking about stoppage time. For me, it is one thing that should be scrapped, the players' best interests. And if I was the PFA or FIFPro, I'd be fighting my battle on that ground, because I think I could win, because it doesn't really matter, because that money can come from television revenue. The games, Arsenal had their own tournament for a while, didn't they? Maybe they still have. And there's certainly a couple of years ago I saw them play Seville at the Emirates. So sell those television rights around the world and get your revenue in that way, and let the players go home to bed in their own beds and be with their own families for all that lies ahead. That's the time where you're really looking for the peak. Not the peak level of fitness, but to get them ready to start the game. And then once the game starts, you just build into the fitness as it goes along. I'm really against it. And honestly, I've coached in non-league football. The furthest we went to, we were at Dartford at the pre-season last year, and we went to Newcastle. And we played Dunstan on the Friday night, and we watched Gateshead play Newcastle, which was very good prep for commentary. It poured with rain the whole time, and we wish we hadn't gone. And that for us is California, I suppose. But we were treated very well, I have to say that.
Yeah, well, California, I mean, and east, they go east as well, of course. I remember spending
they'll all go west if they play too much football. That's the trouble. And we have to find a way to protect them. And since FIFA are not going to give up on any of their tournaments and all the stakeholders who actually control the tournaments, the one thing they don't control, except in a global general sense, it has to be an FA registered match. They don't control these games. And
the one thing I would say is that if you're going to do it in one base. Don't go to California and then come back to the East Coast. Don't go to somewhere in Europe and then go off to Asia. Do it in one base. And I remember a couple of years with Chelsea where they based themselves in LA. All the training was at UCLA, which of course the facilities were fantastic. And that was far, far superior to finishing off in 3 or 4 time zones. But it's also, the climate can be too difficult. It can be too humid. I remember a week with you in Kuala Lumpur.
Gosh, that was the first Abramovich season, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
I flew out with Damien Duff and Wayne Bridge because they were the late entrants, and I had to go later to the tournament to commentate on it. And afterwards, I might have told you this before, I'm not sure I've said it on the podcast before, Frank Lampard, Chelsea won it, didn't they? Won the tournament. Jermaine Genius made a mess of a penalty, I think.
Chipped it.
Doesn't get mentioned very much in his commentary days.
Chip over the crossbar.
He did. And Bobby Robson was in our line of vision, and he went absolutely ballistic. Frank Lampard and John Terry talked to Jeff Shreves and myself after the game and said, I'm not sure we're going to figure too much under this new owner. How wrong can you be?
Get in there. But it was very humid and very difficult to train in those conditions.
The West Coast,
in Malaysia,
I would recommend Torquay, Plymouth, and the East Coast maybe Lowestoft, a good non-league team. Skegness used to have a decent side. Ipswich, if you want.
I remember pre-seasons in Aberystwyth. With players running through the sand dunes. I remember that. Oh.
I'm quite a mild-mannered person as compared to you, very mild-mannered. But I really feel strongly about that and the 15 subs in the dugouts at major tournaments per side. That's a catastrophe. We're close to it. Something awful will happen.
And he'd probably finish off the Abbott with training session with fish and chips.
Can I go to bed now?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening and watching.
Yes,
from
thank
Martin,
you, especially from the state that I find myself in, mentally disappointing for England, but proud of them and delighted for Spain because they play beautiful football. But I'm not a man who does miss a night's sleep very often, probably not for 30 or 40 years, and it's just beginning to hit me.
From Martin and me,
goodbye.
Ta-ra. That's it. Thanks for listening and watching. Don't forget the Patreon if you want to get more involved. Don't forget the substack.com site, The Joy of Football, where Martin and my writings can be found as well. And don't forget to tune in every week because this is a weekly podcast. Off you go. Get on with the rest of your life.